Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Journey. I'm Peter Santry, a former Wall Street exec turned leadership team coach. And this podcast is where seasoned entrepreneurs and CEOs share the lessons, challenges, and playbooks behind building great companies. Today's guest is Mike Shorts, the newly appointed CEO of ITC Manufacturing, the largest wire manufacturing fabricator in the Western US, specializing in decking, shelving, and custom wire applications. Mike's no stranger to leading private companies, and in this episode, we explore why he took the reins at ITC, how he approaches a new leadership role, and what it takes to drive growth in a capital and commodity-intensive business. From listening tours to long-term vision, this is a masterclass in leadership from the front lines of American manufacturing. So welcome, Mike. Good to have you on the show.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Good. Well, let's dive in. So, as I said in the prelude, you've led a lot of private companies, and what attracted you to ITC Manufacturing? And could you tell the audience what the owners were looking for in a CEO and how that whole thing kind of set up for you?
For sure. Yeah, the attraction here became the quintessential opportunity path in an environment that had really good foundations. There was some strength there, some brand recognition and notoriety, good relationships, just in a position of not not maybe professionally managed from a vision standpoint of where do we go next. I think a lot of the history was just what are we doing now? And what attracted me most to this was, taking that foundation piece, building it into this what do we do next picture with the support of really what the owners were looking for was tell us what's about to happen, not necessarily just what happened. And that's a lot of what I enjoy to do and bring to the table is I have this inept ability to be able to see far out into the future, put all these pieces and things together in a way that we can sustain that plan and that growth and that development. And that's what gets me out of bed in the morning and energizes me to do it. And quite frankly, ITC was that script for me of I couldn't write it any better. It was just everything I was looking for at this point in my career was like, well, it has ITC all over it. So, why not do this? This is great. Yeah.
Right. And it was a situation where the owners were really not that involved in the company. And so you had a lot of latitude. And the role of a CEO, of course, is to look out, 3-4 years down the road and create a path for everyone to go. Now, when you come in to a company, obviously, it's as you said, they were lacking in sort of a forward-looking vision. Do you bring with you a playbook? I mean, you've done a bunch of private company CEO roles. How do you approach that when you come into it?
Great question. I would say I don't use a formal or scripted playbook by nature, but my approach is listen first, watch second, and prepare to question the why. So, what I find in a lot of cases is there's first hesitancy to share information because it becomes a little bit of a protected, well, we can't tell you too much because you might find out what's broken, right? Even though that's part of what you're here for is to help, break down the walls and the barriers to repair what's broken. But you have to listen and piece together what everybody's telling you first to make sense of the different variations of similar situations and stories. And you have to watch a lot because certainly in a manufacturing environment, it's not all just on paper. It's not just, a book of business. It's how you do things. And I'm good at the visualization aspect. So when I can see it, I can, put it all together much easier. And then it's just kind of framing that out into um, assessing where it's all at and who's who and why who is who, in kind of working from there. So it's that really is, I mean, biggest thing for me is listening. And it's like a 30-45 day listening and watching piece. Because you learn a lot. And don't kind of, for me, it's don't open your mouth too soon either and try and pretend like you have all the answers, because you don't. I think even if you come from a similar like industry or something very related, you still don't have all the answers. You still got to take your time and slow down and listen, because everybody's got a why. It may not be the best why, but there's a reason things are being done the way they're being done. So you have
Right.
to respect that and see what's going on, see what's
Right.
under the hood.
And you probably, during that phase, to get that communication and to get the real story to come out, I'm sure it's from the beginning a trust building exercise too, so that people can
Absolutely.
open up to you and feel that they can at least be a little bit vulnerable and say maybe what they also think they might do differently, and you can learn from that,
Yeah.
based on what you inherit.
Absolutely. They know change is coming. They know it's imminent, because that's, inherently what happens when a change is done at the top. Someone's not coming in to do exactly the same thing of who left. So you kind of got to build that trust piece of where we're going is not all about me and my ideas. It's also about the inputs and the expertise of the people who have come before me in the picture, um, because there's clearly some framework around why that was all like that. And I'm sure there were lots of ideas that were never heard or were overheard. So, let's just put them all back on the table and see where we head next.
Okay. And I assume that among the first things are focusing on the people aspects, making sure the right people are in the right seats from your leadership team on down through the organization. And then you mentioned the processes. It is a manufacturer. You have to deliver your product profitably. And then just making sure that the operation deals efficiently. So great. So switching gears, you're in the manufacturing business in the US right now, and have a major commodity as your input. I mean, steel is
Mm-hmm.
really it. Um, so can you fill us in on what's going on in the current environment? Obviously, there have been tariffs, there have been some major trade deals signed. How have you been able to navigate that? I just find it so fascinating to be in your space. And then I assume some of this sort of onshoring is going to benefit your business long term, but I'm interested in both the short term aspects, which it must have been chaotic, and then the long term as well.
It was interesting for sure. Certainly, we're in an environment for ITC where steel is 60 to 70% of the cost of our rolled up, finished price of something we make. So, it weighs heavily on the decisions we make and what was going on. And when the tariffs began to happen, which was crazy to me, that when it all shifted and came out, it was like, oh my God, tariffs are happening. Well, kind of my view candidly is, well, what did you think was going to happen? Like it was the campaign of what was going to happen. So like, let's get ready and get ahead of this, because it's not the first time we would have saw the whole tariff thing. So we already had a little bit of a playbook to go by. um, but really what happened for us is, um, you know we weren't overly reliant on imports prior to the tariffs. So there were some relationships out there. And luckily, a lot of the relationships we had from an import perspective, when it first started, were in tariff friendly countries still. So we
I
had
was
a
fortunate.
a little bit of less exposure.
Yeah.
Um, but what the position I took was, you know, this is the world we're living in. And we're also lucky in the sense of the industries we serve being warehousing and storage facilities. Those property owners and leases and leaseors of all of that space really learned from the COVID experience of, don't shut things off because this is just a pause. It's all gonna come back concept. So, I had a good sense and feeling that the timing was just going to be delayed a little bit with everything going on. So I took the approach for us of, we've got a plan, let's keep trekking forward. And there are going to be panic buys, which there absolutely were. But we leveraged our relationships that we had built to not be in a super vulnerable position. And where we had to pivot from where we couldn't get imports and shift domestically, we did get put on allocation with a few, newer vendors, which a lot of people just became allocated at that point. So it didn't matter what you wanted domestically. That's what happens in steel is we can only make so much. So when we want a little bit for everybody is what a steel mill's thinking of. So we move forward in that, understanding that the projects we were working on, there was no indication anything was being canceled. And then as things have kind of turned out, we got ahead of a lot of that. Luckily, the gamble paid off. And, as steel prices kind of come back up a little bit, now we're just lucky we're in a spot where we don't have to ride out that new little wave that's happening. We're ahead on our steel purchases. So maybe we'll come out just a little bit ahead. It was a gamble. It paid,
sounds like
and
you made, yeah, it sounds like you made a little bit of a market call and
a little bit. Yeah,
and
it
maybe
doesn't work
got
every time.
stocked up and fortunately, two ways. I mean, we all saw what happened to the supply chain in COVID, and you had diversified your sourcing, and it enabled you to probably navigate it a little better maybe than perhaps some others could. And
Yeah, it was a
that's
little bit easier. Yeah,
yeah.
it was a little bit easier, and I mean, it's not a risk that pays off all the time when you kind of hedge a little bit like that. But it was not an overexposed hedge. It just,
Yeah.
we're again kind of going back to your first question, and in the ITC thing that attracted me is, we're we're a financially stable company with a good cushion in everything that we do. So, I could take a little bit more risk than maybe somebody who didn't want to tie up that extra big chunk of cash in a buy that, well, what do I do with it if it all tanks, right?
Right. Right.
Even though I'd buy
Right. And then
it.
and the customers too had that, had that this too shall pass after having gone through COVID. They knew
Yeah,
and they were mature about, keeping projects going and not stopping and starting and doing all the things that they might have done before. In our conversations before, you had talked about the importance of outside perspectives and that you're in a peer
mm.
group and that you're in, maybe some coaching. How is that? How do you use those resources in times like this?
Well, it's huge. As I've come through my kind of evolving of my leadership style, and but also just elevating to different levels of being a leader through my career. It's I quickly found the higher up you go, the less direct opportunity you get for support. And certainly when you get to the top, um, I mean, there are things that you can talk to about the now with your direct reports and team, but there's a ton of stuff you can't at the top because you're developing things at such a forward looking in thinking about all the scenarios piece. You can't freak people out by, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that. And really what I've discovered and became honest with myself is finding people to talk to in all different aspects of just things. And it's direct business things and scenarios and concepts and what's happening in the market, and really almost like no different than doing this, and being able to just think about a different perspective. Here's some other leaders' perspective on a podcast of, hey, that might be good to think about. So having that network group has been huge, because, and eye-opening also, because what I thought I was developing, getting closer to this ideal role that I wanted to be in my career,
Mhm.
or the network I thought I had developed, when I really needed stuff, I didn't develop wide enough or deep enough. So now I'm finding myself reaching out in different ways to other groups and in like-minded people to just talk things through. And it is truly crazy and refreshing how many people at higher levels are looking for exactly the same thing, and we just want to talk and
Right.
vent and share like a smile or a win, or the craziness that you just can't do otherwise. And
Right.
usually we all get it. It's like you're 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 in a moment, but it's just so refreshing to feel that way, and um it's not as unapproachable as what I think. That advice that I would give is just reach out, because people are willing to give back. They really, really are.
Right.
And
Right.
you don't have to run it alone, right?
Right.
I mean,
So specifically, you're a member of a peer group that has other CEOs that presumably have dealt with issues not in your industry, but in their circumstances, so that you can you can use their experience and background and advice to your advantage,
yes.
which is
And
which
they're
is
they're
great.
open to that, because they've
Yeah.
been through it's even already the things I've been talking about and asking about. Somebody in the group has been through something sort of similar. So you just, if nothing else, to not even have a solution out of it, it still just gives you the confidence that, like, you're not the only one who's ever dealt with this.
Right.
So it's just, you know, talking through some things out loud that otherwise just resonate in your brain, that don't get verbalized. And,
Right.
as we can all appreciate, things shift a little bit when you're able to verbalize a thought. As soon as you can verbalize and get it out loud, you hear it differently than when it just sits in your mind.
Right.
So that's the value I get out of it. And doing this kind of thing too. It's like when I hear it back, it's like, okay, yeah, I didn't really think about that well enough in the past. So let's rethink that again. Right. So it's good.
Good. And you come away with actionable things to take. So fast forward today, you're 6 or 7 months in, you've done your listening tour, in the process of assessing, all sorts of things that we talked about earlier. So what vision is emerging? And again, this is out of an uncertain time, with trade deals being signed and all that sort of stuff. What's emerging for your vision for the company as you look out 2 to 3 years into the future?
The vision really for us is getting better structured to scale, because we have a great opportunity with everything thriving in the market in our industry right now, markets we serve, to take on more with the current and slightly modified infrastructure that have already been in place. So there's that future chunk to it. And I think really inside that bucket, the future piece that is really exciting for ITC and where we're heading is how we'll be able to support the automated robotic warehouse, autonomous warehouse environment, that right now is really being built around one-off systems. Every company's got their own little infrastructure piece. And, what I think ITC will be able to bring to that table, based on what we do really, really well, is helping that industry standardize on some components that helps their the delivery of their solution where then that they can focus on, their robots and their algorithms and the pieces that truly bring the value to that warehouse at the end of the day. The structure, steel that everything sits on, we can help solve that piece, and getting into that market a little more formally for us is, to me, going to be a really exciting development of shifting from still supporting the static warehouse environment, but also being able to support the development of the automated warehouse environment, because they're still, for at least a decade, they're still going to need to be both. Not everybody can get into a fully autonomous automated storage solution. So, I think we have a really good role to play there based on what we do. And to me, that's pretty exciting to be a little bit innovative in that part, right? And help merge and bring everything together for a full solution and not just like one-off buckets. So
Right.
excited for that.
And I would see the benefits to you of, obviously, if you can standardize products that's adapted more broadly, you can deliver a product more efficiently because it's not as bespoke
Absolutely.
in terms of your manufacturing process, but also creating that value for the customer of providing a solution, not just a product, and say, this is the way that you can enhance what you're doing, given what we can produce, and maybe differentiate yourself in the marketplace versus your competitors. And I wanted to ask something which I missed before, but I know you have foreign competitors in your space, and there's foreign steel coming in. Given what's going on, how is that? How have they been affected, and has that been beneficial to you as a domestic manufacturer?
Overall, it's been beneficial. I think at the end of the day, the tariff pressure has been good for us from that pure side of it doesn't make it as cost effective to just import automatically without really thinking about it, because you tie up a lot of money from the time you place purchase order, your deposit, and then all the product that sits on the water for 30, 45 days at ports, and port congestion, and time it gets to you. Like, it just, those costs now begin to become more in play than what they used to come in play. So it has helped us for sure. It has allowed us to kind of refocus a little bit too on how we look at bits and pieces that we import and buy in, and kind of what we can do in the future with technology to reshore that in a way. So, from a manufacturing perspective, that's kind of cool, because some of the things we're looking at is different machines, different equipment than what we're fully used to, but it supports the whole basket of goods. So it's a great time, but I know there are a few that are probably struggling with this, because we picked up some opportunity where they just couldn't tie up any more money on the water. So deliveries got longer. We took the approach, deliveries got shorter. So we kind of went down we'll cut our deliveries in half time frame, and that's paid off a little bit. So
Yeah.
it allows our customers to not have to plan so far out. We're providing them an opportunity to react if they need to, rather than plan. But yet we're in a planning phase of allowing them to react. So we've created a little bit more value in our cycle.
I think it's fascinating. Just all the implications of all this stuff is just now being realized in the marketplace, and your adaptability is great. We all know that that things don't grow in a straight line. What are the impediments that you can see going out as that could really put a damper on kind of what is a very, very positive sort of backdrop for you and your business?
Yeah, great question. Just, I think similar to what went through the COVID time also could still play into a factor in the future with over supply, I guess, with too much being warehoused, then too much isn't throughputing with different companies. Their product turnover isn't where it needs to be to generate the cash they need to generate. So then things kind of get more restricted and dry up, and warehouses close. In our space, that probably becomes one of the most significant chunks that affects us is when the economy shifts to where warehousing closes or consolidates, there becomes all this used material in the market that, has a great sense from a potential value because the cost of buying it and putting it somewhere else is great.
Right.
But it does become challenging for those that are buying it because now you're buying used stuff that you don't know how it's been treated, you don't know the integrity that's left in it.
Right.
So you have to play that a little bit, but that's probably one of the larger disruptors that we do see is that used market chunk that has its place like all industries do, but it can just be the disruptor we don't like to see.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you a question because I don't know if it's next laying over business, but obviously data centers with AI are huge. People are looking at land, monstrous facilities to create these AI, sort of data centers. Are you going to benefit from that? Is that something the racking, can it be used for that type of um, uh, facility? Is that something that's going to be favorable for you?
It will absolutely be favorable, kind of from a racking standpoint, not so much, but in the wire mesh product
Okay.
group that we make, there's a kind of very specific product that goes into that market and similar, where all the cables are laid going through that facility. So the cable tray market is really starting to explode, and we're planning to be a player in that chunk. And between the pure data centers and then all the other infrastructure that's being built, there's a huge need for that stuff. And there are a lot of players in that game that are from full niche specialty and commodity. We're hoping to be somewhere in the middle where we're neither low or high, but we can fit our expertise in there. But the data centers in those builds that are not, they may slow down a little bit as the processing of data becomes more efficient, but there's still going to be that need for that. I know certainly in our market where we are, oddly enough, the amount of water that goes into cooling a data center facility, being in the desert, the amount of data centers that are being built here in the Phoenix market is just astronomical of how fast they get put in and get built up. But every time we see another one being done, it's like, okay, this we can help service that market. So
Yeah.
it's kind of exciting too.
That's crazy. Well, very interesting times in manufacturing, and I appreciate it and wish you luck in your new venture here. If somebody in the audience wants to learn about you or ITC, what's the best way for them to contact you, Mike?
Best way for me is to look me up on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there, so you should be able to find me. There's not a lot of Mike Short's pseudonyms out there to get me confused by, and I'm kind of if you do find me, I'm the good-looking bald guy on LinkedIn, so you can find me that way. But other than that, you can find ITC through our LinkedIn page or our website and kind of get us there. All
Okay,
the traditional stuff.
great. Well, thank you for joining us today, and thank you to the audience for listening in, and we'll see you on the next episode of On the Entrepreneur's Journey. Thank you.